Alrighty, well, hello. I got strawberries. See that? I'm picking strawberries again. I like picking strawberries. I grew up picking strawberries. I did every June. That was a big deal to pick strawberries, wild strawberries. Anyway, I just promised a viewer that I would tell some ghost stories from Perth, from my hometown of Perth, Ontario, Canada. It's an old town. It was founded in 1816, and there's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of history there. And with history comes paranormal activity, it seems. Anyway, I'll tell you a story right off the bat about the hospital in Perth, the Great War Memorial Hospital. That's what it's called, GWM, Great War Memorial. And Perth actually has its memorial to the soldiers who fell in World War I and World War II at the Perth Hospital. That's where everybody meets on Remembrance Day and so on, you know. They have their ceremony with the wreaths and everything. But prior to being the hospital, the oldest part of the building was a house. It was actually a private residence. And that residence was owned by a judge. And that judge's name was John Glass Mallock. John Glass Mallock. That was his name. His middle name was Glass. By all accounts, he was such a bad guy, his middle name should probably have been Ass. Because that's what he was. He was a real ass. Anyway, cheated people in business deals, just a horrible person, used his position as a judge to abuse people and to steal from people and everything. Just a thoroughly wicked, nasty, evil man. Horrible person. Probably as bad or worse than the worst person he ever sent to prison. You know, probably at least as bad as the worst person he ever sent to prison, and maybe even worse than that. Anyway, John Glass Mallock, when he was building his house, which many years later became the hospital, he hired an Irish farmer from way out in the country to quarry some stone for him and deliver it to the job site. Promised to pay the farmer, you know, for his efforts, compensate him properly. So the farmer, he quarried a bunch of stone on his property, and he brought it in. Anyway, he brought a wagon load of it in. Took him several days to get there because, of course, you know, not like he was driving a truck. He was driving a horse-drawn wagon, and there were no roads to speak of, only trails and, you know, and so on. And so it was rough going. And, of course, he was carrying stone, which is really heavy. And so he had broken wheels and broken axles, and he had to camp on the side of the road at night. It was a big deal. But the thing that kept that farmer going was the thought of the payday. I'm going to deliver this stone to the judge, and he's going to pay me. And I'm going to have some money so I can look after my family, so I can, you know, buy food for my babies and anything else that's needed. Maybe buy a new dress for the wife, you know, or whatever, you know, so she can be proud when she goes to the Sunday meeting at the little church down the road or whatever, you know. This was the idea. So, for those reasons, and because he was a good man, and he wanted to provide for his family, and he just kept that in mind, and he persevered. And eventually he arrived in Perth with his load of stone. He suffered greatly to get it there, but he got it there. And he delivered it to Judge Mallock. Anyway, he unloaded all the stone there at the site, where Judge Malik was building his house, which he would call Victoria Hall. That was the name of the house. You know, rich people always named their houses in those days. And anyway, he unloaded all that stone, and he says to the judge, "All right, sir, there's your stone for your house. If you'd just be paying me, I'll be on my way." And the judge looked at him and said, "Paying you? What do you mean, paying you? Like, good God, man, are you crazy? Why would I pay you?" You know, and the farmer said, "Because you give your word you'd pay me. I didn't make this trip for the good of my health. You know, you give me your word you'd pay me. So pay me. Pay me and I'll be on my way." Well, Judge Malik, he just laughed at the farmer. He said, "Well, no," he said, "I'm not going to pay you." Well, the farmer said, "Well, that's a hell of a thing. You're not going to pay me." You know, he said, that's just awful. Why wouldn't you pay me?" Well, Judge Malik said, "Look, I'm not going to pay you. That's the bottom line. I have my reasons." Main reason being he was a cheap SOB. You know, anyway, not going to pay you. What he said, what Judge Malik said is, if you don't like it, you're perfectly free. Hey, you still own the stone. I haven't paid you for it. It's still your property. If you don't like it, you are free to load it all back up into your wagon and to get the hell out of here with it. Well, of course, you know, the farmer wasn't going to, you know, he didn't want to have another trip like the one he had just had. Last thing he wanted to do was spend, you know, another week or whatever sleeping on the side of the road and repairing busted wheels and busted wagon axles and you know, calf killing his horses, you know, forcing them to pull that. And so the farmer, he said, "Nah," he said, "I'm not going to do that." He said, "That'd be too much. But I'll tell you what I will do. What I will do is I'll put a curse on you. I'll put a curse on your family." And he said, "This is what's going to happen." He said, "All this stone that's going to be used to build your house that I worked so hard to quarry and to deliver to you, and then you didn't keep your word." Well, he said, the house that's built with this stone, he said, your house, he said, "I'm putting a curse on it. And what's more," he said, "all your male descendants, your sons and your grandsons and your great-grandsons and on down the line, every one of them is going to die young. And that's going to happen until you," and well, he said, "that's going to happen until this house is put to the public good. Until this house is no longer your private domicile, but is, in fact, something that's being used for the public good." He said, "Until that happens, all your kinfolk, all your male kinfolk, all your progeny, they're going to die young." Anyway, Judge Malik laughed at him. He basically said, "Oh, you superstitious old Irish fool, you know, be gone with you then, you know." So the guy left. "You know, you just remember what I said, Judge," and he left. Judge Malik probably laughed for a week, you know, old fool, you know, thinking that you put a curse on him, you know. Silly, totally silly. But let me tell you the rest of the story. Oh, look at that. It's a baby rabbit. It's a baby rabbit. Isn't that cute? I don't know if it showed or not. I hope it did. Anyway, I'll tell you what happened. Judge Malik's sons all died young, and they all died in weird ways. Didn't make any sense. You know, crazy situation. They all died in freak accidents, or they just got sick and dropped dead all of a sudden for no apparent reason. Whew, these damn bugs. Anyway, I wish they'd drop dead. Anyway, that's what happened. Well, Judge Malek's grandsons, same thing happened to them. They all died young. They all died in their teens, in their early 20s. And all of them died in strange ways, you know, different ways that couldn't be explained. These bugs are really driving me crazy. Anyway, after all that, the family had had enough. Judge Malek had already passed away, and I'll tell you a story about that too in a minute. But the family had had enough, and so they gave the house to the town of Perth, and it became the hospital. And at that point, the curse was broken, and the Malek clan started surviving. Those that hadn't already died did live normal lives, you know, normal lifespan and so on. But here's the story about Judge Malek. When Judge Malek passed away, this was still in the days of the horse-drawn carriage. So the undertaker had, I got a mosquito there. The undertaker had a horse-drawn hearse. And of course, he had Judge Malek's bones in the back of it there in a box. Going to take him out to the cemetery and plant him in the ground where he belonged. And it was in the circular driveway right in front of the house there. And if you look at that building, the hospital, you can still see where the house was. You can still see the original part of the building, you know, the old mansion. It's right in the center of the building. Everything was built out and behind it. Out from it and behind it, basically. Anyway, Judge Malek, he's laid out in the back of the hearse there in his box on his way to meet his final destiny, you know, meet his maker or whatever, meet somebody, probably somebody not very nice, but anyway, probably somebody mean like he was. Anyway, yeah, he's in the back of the hearse. The driver's sitting up on the seat. You know how it was, they had the seat up on top of the hearse, basically, with the footboard and everything, and he's got the reins in his hands, and he's got the team of horses. And of course, you know, the hearse is all decked out in decorations and stuff, the way they used to do it for these occasions. And he's going to take Judge Malek on his last ride out to the cemetery, plant him in the ground. The horses are pawing at the ground. They can't move that hearse. Now bear in mind, this was their job. They pulled a hearse all the time. This is what they did. They belonged to the undertaker. They pulled his hearse. So it wasn't that they weren't strong enough to do it or anything, or didn't know how. They were pawing at the ground. Pawing at the ground, and they could not move that hearse. And the you know, the undertaker there, he's up on his seat there, and he's getting mad. He's getting frustrated. He's got a whip. You know, a frustrated man with a whip is quite a sight. Anyway, I'll tell you. He had his whip there, and he's roaring, ah, like that, and he's flogging the horses, and the horses, ah, you know, like that. But they can't move it. They're pawing at the ground. They can't move the damn hearse. Can't move it. They're doing their damnedest to move it. They're putting everything they got into it, and they have lots of incentive because he's whipping the hell out of them. And they can't move that hearse. Well, what happens? But old Father Maher, or whatever, I don't know, he was an old priest that was around in Perth back then. Old Father, I think it's pronounced Maher, but I'm not sure. Anyway, old Father Maher come along, and he had his bucket of holy water and his dipper. He stuck his dipper in the holy water, and he flung the holy water. He walked all around the hearse, and he flung the holy water onto the ground, all around the wheels. And when he hit that last wheel at the back of the hearse, After he went around all four wheels. He hit the last wheel. When he hit that with the holy water, the horses were pawing at the ground, and the guy is up there, and he's whipping the horses and stuff, and they're just pawing at the ground, and all of a sudden, that hearse shot across the lawn. And the guy up on the thing, of course, he was quite surprised. He had the whip in his hand there to, holy smokes, what's going on? We're moving probably a good 15 miles per hour here. Holy, this ain't good. He had an awful time stopping the horses. But first he couldn't get them going, then he couldn't get them to stop. It's like the hearse busted free of something when the priest sprinkled the holy water on the ground around the wheels. And what everybody said is that the devil had a hold of that hearse. And that when the priest sprinkled the holy water on the ground, that forced the devil to release his grip. And that's why the hearse suddenly shot across the lawn. And there were a lot of people that saw this happen. It was a big event because it was a judge, after all, a prominent citizen in the community. And not only that, but he was also a son of a bitch. So probably a lot of people were there just to see him off. Yeah, say good on you, You so-and-so, good on you. Yeah, remember when you cheated me out of this or that? Remember when you ruled against me unjustly, or whatever it was, Remember all that? Well, good riddance. I'm sure there were a lot of people there that were just, because he was a wicked, evil man. Apparently, he was just horrible. And everybody said that. Even the people who liked him said he was a bad guy, Even his friends didn't like him. But anyway, that's the story of Judge John Glass Malloch, the owner of the original part of the Perth Hospital, of the Great War Memorial Hospital in Perth, Ontario, Canada. And that's the story of how an Irish farmer had the last laugh. Don't mess with Irish farmers, I guess, eh? You may be a judge, but don't mess with an Irish farmer. Bad idea, as he found out. Anyway, it was years after he died, because he was a stubborn outfit, I suppose, and would never acknowledge that the curse might just be a thing. There might be something in it. And so, it was years after he passed on that the house was given to the town and turned into the hospital. Anyway, and then of course, like I say, over the years it's been added to, but you can still see where the original, if you stand in front of it, you'll know where the original house was, because it still looks like an old stone mansion. There's a part of the hospital right in the center of it that looks that way. That was John Glass Malloch's house, built with stone that he stole from that Irish farmer. Anyway, it's also said that he haunts that house, that he haunts the halls of the hospital. So anyway, people claim to have seen him in the halls and whatnot in the hospital at times. Anyway, there's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. It actually did happen. I'm not making these up. These are things that happened. I will admit that I'm being a little bit dramatic in my descriptions. But what happened with the hearse being unable to move, and the guy flogging the horses and them pawing at the ground, and the priest going around and sprinkling, and then the hearse taken off as if it had suddenly been released, that actually did happen. The Irish farmer getting cheated out of the money for his stone, that happened, and he did put the curse on Judge Malloch and his family. And all Judge Malloch's sons after that did die young and in weird ways, and the same with his grandsons. And that went on until the building was given over to be used as the hospital in town. Once that happened, well, then they stopped dying young. The curse was broken at that point. Just like the Irish farmer who made the curse said it would be. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to upload this now, and I'm going to go inside. The mosquitoes are driving me crazy. We'll see you later.